Welcome to the Greater Than Business podcast, where it's all about creating an amazingly successful business without sacrificing your quality of life, because life should be greater than business. And now, here is your host, Courtney Bedore.
This is episode 56 of the Greater Than Business podcast, and today we are going to be talking all about exactly what I use to produce this podcast. I have been talking to several people over the last couple months, and with the whole COVID chaos that has happened, podcasting has become a huge industry, or it's had a huge boost in its industry. And I want to take a second here to talk today about how simple it can be to host a podcast. It doesn't need to be complicated. And if you are struggling with getting weekly content out there to your people, a podcast might be the best thing for you to do. So personally, for me, I have always struggled. I have been in business for 5+ years, give or take. And up till recently, actually a little over a year ago, I never produced weekly content. It was the worst mistake I have ever made in all of my business building. And that's why I want to talk to you guys about how easy and simple it can be to host a podcast. Back when I first started my business, I didn't want a following. I was a service provider. I was happy to help people build their big dreams, their business, and I still do that on a daily basis. But now I got a little bit of that like evil green monster kind of going on when I was helping people to make millions of dollars and I wasn't making anything more than my regular retainer. And that started to hurt just a touch. So then I thought, well, I have obviously been doing this for 5+ years. I have a skill set. I can talk. I love to talk. Why don't I host a podcast? So I had put it into plans, probably over 2 years ago that I wanted to start a podcast, and I never actually did it. I remember buying my first microphone, which was a Yeti Blue. It was beautiful. It was silver. I still have it. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to start a podcast. This is going to be my microphone. I got this. And then I realized I didn't know what to do. And then I didn't do anything for a very long time. Finally, I got the kick in the butt that I needed, and I started producing weekly shows about a year ago. It was actually a year ago on July 9th, so happy anniversary to me. But I wanted to get my voice out there, get my message out there, share what I have learned, share with people that are just starting, that are struggling. I wanted to also share with you guys my thoughts on business. And the only way that I could really get my point across was through voice. So video, obviously I can do that, but video to me it's a barrier for myself, because I would feel like I'd have to get myself at least presentable for a camera. And there's some days where I just don't want to do that. So podcasting, I can wear whatever I want. I can look however I want. I just have to talk. So it became super easy for me to be able to do it. And if you haven't noticed, I'm a talker, so it works out well. And it became my choice. So I thought I would share with you guys what literally the 5 things that I needed in my business in order to start a podcast. So first things first, the microphone that I use now is not the lovely Yeti Blue microphone. It's actually a microphone called the ATR 2100. And it's a USB microphone. It just plugs right into my computer, and I don't have to do anything with it. I think at the beginning there was a couple settings I had to set, and I did that within my podcast recorder. And the podcast recorder that I use is GarageBand. So that is another another thing that I'm going to talk about in this episode. But within GarageBand, I believe I just went in, set a couple settings, and then I was done. That was it. That's all it took. And the microphone is amazing. I love the sound quality. It takes very little effort for me to edit the podcast, I guess I should say. It takes even less work now that I have an editor. But when I was first trying to figure it out and going through everything, I just didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. And this microphone allowed me to have really good sound quality with minimal effort on the back end. So after I've recorded, that's it. So I also use a pop filter, which is something that stops the noise when you talk. It stops that from being picked up by the mic, as well as it stops your heavy breathing that you do when you're talking. And because this microphone is so good, it doesn't pick up all the background noises. So currently, and obviously for the last couple months, I am recording right now with a dog, a cat, 2 kids. I just had a delivery truck show up 2 seconds ago. You guys won't ever hear that because it only picks up my voice directly going into the microphone. And as I said that, I just tapped the microphone. So you will hear that probably in the show because I'm not going to go back and record it. But the reason why I love this microphone is it just makes it so much easier for me specifically, where I don't have to worry about, is the sound quality good? Are you hearing the background noises? Because you will, but I know that it's not going to take away from what I'm saying. It's not going to be distracting for you. If you hear something in the background as I'm recording, it's not going to be something that will make you think I am unprofessional, or if anything, I'm just unpolished, I guess would be the good way to put it. Where I talk the way that I talk, I get my point across in the way that I get my point across. And if you're going to be nitpicky about the audio quality and all of that other stuff, then I don't necessarily want you listening to this podcast. I produce it so that I just get my message out there because my message is the most important thing. All of the fanciness and having like the sound-proof room and all of that other stuff, that's not important to me. My message is what's important. So I want to make sure that you guys hear what I'm saying clearly, concisely, and you don't pick up any of the background noises that can cause you to view what I'm saying as less than what I'm saying, if that makes sense. Hopefully you followed me on that little tangent there, but basically those are the 2 things that I use for sound quality. And they're pretty basic. I think the microphone is maybe, I want to say it's under $100, but I will link it in the show notes and I will specify the price currently, what it's sitting at. And then the pop filter, I think, was under $20. So super, super easy there. And then I do use a support arm. So the reason why I use a support arm and what that is something that attaches to my desk so it's stable. And then it's got like this, it's a boom arm basically, where it's this contraption that allows me to adjust. So when I'm recording podcasts, there's some days where I'm sitting down and I just want my microphone to be sitting on my desk so I can just move the arm down. But then there's other days where I'm standing, like today, and I obviously need my microphone moved up just a little bit because I'm short, but just a little bit so that I can stand and comfortably record the podcast. So I use this arm. It is not needed. The microphone itself comes with a desktop support tripod type thing, and it works phenomenally. But for me, I wanted the boom arm just to make sure that I had the flexibility of being able to record how I wanted. And if I want to move over to and sit on the couch that's in my office, that's beside where my podcast mic is, I can just swing it over there and I can sit on the couch and be nice and comfy. I can roll up my office chair. I can do whatever I want. But the boom arm just makes it simple and it holds the microphone steady so that if I do accidentally tap my desk when I'm recording, it absorbs the sound and it absorbs that impact so that I don't have to go back and edit and I don't have to stop recording. and start recording again at a different point. So it just makes it easier that it minimizes those sound impacts like I was talking about before. So those are my things that I use to record. So sound is the ATR 2100 USB mic. I have a pop filter, and I have a support arm or a boom arm or whatever you want to call it. It's basically actually, in the show notes, I will show you a picture of my exact podcasting setup. So you can find the show notes at greaterthanbusiness.com/056. And there, you'll be able to see the exact setup that I'm using with a picture. And that should help you guys to kind of visualize it a little bit better. So take a second, hop over the show notes and take a peek. So that is my recording setup. Now, to actually physically record on my computer, I use GarageBand. I did have a subscription to Adobe Audition, but it was a little bit more complicated than what I needed, and GarageBand was free on my Mac, and I went with it, and I've never looked back. So when I had Audition, it took a little bit more setup, but with GarageBand, it's just easy. I just literally go in, I make sure my microphone's working, I do a test run and just say test, test, test a couple times, make sure the sound's coming through okay, and then I hit record and off I go. So it's really fun to use it. It doesn't take a whole lot. All you do is export it, and then what I do is I upload it into a Google Drive. And then from there, I send it to my wonderful podcast editor. So I have removed myself from this part of the podcast, the editing and the setup and the production, because that doesn't drive the needle of my business forward. The podcast itself is detrimental to my business, but the editing is not something where I want to be spending my time. So thankfully, I have a really good friend of mine that I know through a client who graciously accepted to take me on as a total newbie podcaster that had no idea what she was doing, and he has helped me tremendously. So his name is Russell, and he works at Love Travel Film is his company name. And you can find him on Instagram if you just look up Love Travel Film. And he is absolutely amazing. I will link to him in the show notes because everything that he does is just so phenomenal for me. And he has really kept me on track with producing this podcast, as well as he sends me subtle messages of motivation to remember to batch record and to remember to make sure that I get my episodes to him on time. So he's kind of got this little accountability built into him, which keeps me on track, because there's some days where I've got 70 balls in the air. I'm dealing with my clients where I'm working on their business. I'm dealing with my own business. I've got a house with 2 kids, dog, cat, husband, and during COVID, they've all been home with me, so it's not as peaceful here as it once was. So there are a ton of distractions going on, and there's a ton of reasons why I can fall off the wagon with recording my podcast, and he has really helped me to learn to stay on track. And he's also really understanding if I don't get an episode to him on time. He lets me know that it's okay. He doesn't hate me. And whenever I get it to him is when I get it to him. But he's just amazing. So anyways, enough of a love fest for Russell, but he is my fantastic podcast editor. And without him, this show would not happen. So I had to give him a good shout out here because he really, really helps keep everything on track. And then obviously, those are the main 5 things that I use to produce this podcast. I do also have a WordPress site that I use for show notes and be able to link up anything else that I need. And then I use Libsyn to house my podcast. And then it's actually shared across, I believe, anywhere that you can listen to podcasts. So I know Google Play, iTunes, or Apple Podcasts, I guess they're called now. Where's the other one? there's one more. Oh, Spotify. Total brain malfunction there. Yes, Spotify as well. So he takes all of my episodes and Russell will put them up on the different podcasting channels, and he looks after loading it to Libsyn for me because I don't know how to do that. And what's the other? I'm just trying to think of all the steps that I go through. I think that's it. Oh, and then Russell actually makes my graphics for my podcast as well. So he will put the little motion graphic that you'll see on our Instagram page. So if you actually haven't already checked out our Instagram page, I'm going to do a bit of a shameless plug here, but go to @greaterthanbusiness on Instagram and you'll find us there. And we have a nice little summary of all of our podcasts on an Instagram page. So if you haven't checked that out yet, as always, the link is in the show notes, but go check it out there and you'll be able to see his fantastic little sound graphics that he makes for us as well. So that's pretty much it. Like I feel like I should talk more about the steps that I do to produce this podcast, but in all honesty, that's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot that goes on behind the scenes here. It's obviously there's some like production things that happen before where I'm researching the topic and I'm making sure that I've got some kind of notes that I want to go over as I'm talking. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. So if you are debating on doing a podcast in your business, please go check out the show notes page. Look at all the stuff that I use. It can be that simple. And it's super easy to do if you just sit down and you try to produce some sort of weekly content in your business every single week. Because that is going to help you to grow your business. And you have to constantly be showing up for your people. And the best way to do that is by producing free content. And the free content can be something as easy as a podcast. That's how you're going to draw people in. That's how they're going to get to know you. That's how they're going to get used to all of your little quirkiness, because something like a podcast will definitely put it out there. And there's so many other mediums that you can use, but I personally love podcasting. So that's all I'm going to say about this episode. I don't want to get into any more details because I don't really have any more. And this is my chosen content that I like to create, and I hope that you guys will consider it for your own business if you're still looking for something to either get an additional piece of content that you can put out there, or if you are trying to boost up your already existing podcast and you just want to get a different microphone or find out if you want to hire an editor. I've got one for you. And if you are struggling in business and you don't know where to start with producing content. So no matter what stage of business you're in, I've got your back. Check out the show notes page. I'll list everything there for you. And as always, if you have any questions, I'm just an email away. So I can't wait to talk to you guys again next week. Let me just check. We are going to be talking about what I use to host live webinars. So that'll be really fun. And I can't wait to talk to you guys next week.
Thanks for listening to the Greater Than Business podcast at www.greaterthanbusiness.com.